Hi, welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy. Hope you're doing well today. So I want to start out before I go through this spiral. I want to play a video. It's by a YouTube channel called Chapter 20. The name of the video is called New Jerusalem / North Pole / Emerald City / Zion. Okay, I'll also pin this video so you can watch the whole thing in the comments. So I have it sped up, so I'm going to play the part where it describes the New Jerusalem. Okay, here we go.
If a mixture of partial preterism and premillennialism comes closest. In other words, most of the prophecy, including the millennial kingdom, lies in the past. The second coming of Christ happened before the millennial kingdom, and today only everything from chapter 20 of John's Revelation onwards has to be fulfilled. So the short season of Satan, the last battle against the saints, and the day of reckoning. Watch my video Satan's Little Timeline if you want to know more about the chronology of the final season and our place in time before the day of Armageddon. What speaks for this? If you take a closer look at Jesus' words to his disciples in Matthew, you will immediately notice that it requires a great deal of misinterpretation to assume his second coming in our present future. He speaks in very clear terms about his return during the lifetime of the disciples in the near future. However, these statements are often ignored or degraded to metaphors. There are good reasons to believe that Jesus and his saints have disappeared to the North Pole and are living there in the New Jerusalem, both during the millennial kingdom and right now. This is a floating island with several temples and buildings above Mount Meru. This was the seat of government in the millennial kingdom, where the 144,000 saints lived.
So did you hear that? They're talking about Jesus living at the North Pole. I'll slow it down so we can hear the rest.
And it can move, so it was not always directly above the North Pole. In the book of Ezekiel, the New Jerusalem is Ezekiel's prophetic vision of a city centered on the rebuilt Holy Temple, to be established in Jerusalem, which would be the capital of the Millennium Kingdom, the meeting place of the 12 tribes of Israel, during the 1,000-year Messianic era.
So you have to remember, you have 12 tribes, but you have source too. So the question is it 13?
In the book of Revelation, the city is also called the Heavenly Jerusalem, as well as simply being called Zion in other books of the Bible. The New Jerusalem is described in various Christian and Jewish writings, for the most part in agreement, as a heavenly city that descends from heaven after the apocalypse. Based on the book of Revelation, premillennialism holds that, following the end times and the second creation of heaven and earth, the New Jerusalem will be the earthly location where all true believers will spend eternity with God. Christianity interprets the city as a physical and spiritual restoration or divine recreation of the city of Jerusalem. It is also interpreted by many Christian groups as referring to the church to be the dwelling place of the saints. The New Jerusalem is described with matching details. It is made of shining gold, has 12 gates, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and is decorated with a number of precious stones that are described in detail. The precious stones will become relevant again later. In Jewish mysticism, there are 2 gardens of Eden and 2 promised lands, the heavenly invisible one and the earthly visible one that is a copy of the heavenly invisible one. Heaven in Jewish mysticism includes a heavenly promised land, including Jerusalem, the temple, and the Ark of the Covenant, and a heavenly garden of Eden, including the tree of life, a storehouse for the manna that angels eat, and multiple rivers that water the garden. Depending on the text, the New Jerusalem is described as a recreation of the earthly Jerusalem, or as a gigantic golden cube, with a length, width, and height equivalent to 2,225 kilometers, or 1,500 miles. I have found a fascinating connection between this description of the New Jerusalem and the mathematics of fractals. In mathematics, the Menger sponge, also known as the Menger cube, Sierpinski cube, or Sierpinski sponge, is a fractal curve. It is a 3-dimensional generalization of the 1-dimensional Cantor set and 2-dimensional Sierpinski carpet. A Jerusalem cube is a fractal object first described by Eric Baird in 2011. It is created by recursively drilling Greek cross-shaped holes into a cube. The construction is similar to the Menger sponge, but with 2 different size cubes.
So let me show you what they're talking about. It looks like that church, doesn't it? Interesting, huh? This is a 3-dimensional version of what he's talking about. But he's also referring it to this is a fractal cube. Fractal. which is like a Fibonacci spiral, guys. Okay, we're going to go with this a little bit longer, and then I'm going to show you how all of this fits together.
The name comes from the face of the cube resembling a Jerusalem cross pattern. I find that pretty interesting that the Jerusalem cross, a symbol of the Crusaders, has high-level mathematics embedded in it, that related to a cube. Technically, the New Jerusalem is not literally described as a cube. My gut tells me that these are simply the overall dimensions, and the rectangular city is rather inside a golden sphere with these dimensions.
So let me show you what he's referring to. Huh. Venus star, anyone? Sphere in the middle. Inside of a sphere, there's no dimensions, right? This is a Merkaba vehicle. Okay. Very interesting, huh? You see how they've taken the symbols and made us be afraid of them, right? So we're not really doing what's right, guys.
Perhaps a toroidal field.
Toroidal field.
Perhaps because it is not so easy to describe the volume of a sphere in words.
That's right.
It would be a kind of protective bubble that serves as a shield and is described in the book of Zechariah as a wall of fire. But I could be...
So it makes you think about all of those pictures of Jesus and the saints, right? With the sphere behind them. Maybe that's just saying this is where our home's at, right? We're at the New Jerusalem. We're at the North Pole, the home of the saints. Well, my grandmother, she told me, when she first passed away in 2008, she told me that Adam lived in a crystal castle.
Be wrong. I think the real Mount Zion is located at the North Pole and has been given many names throughout history. Mount Meru in Buddhism, Mount Kailash in Hinduism, and Mount Hara in Persia, to name but a few. Psalms 48 describes the floating city of the king above Mount Zion.
Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, on the sides of the north, the city of the great king.
Do you remember the book, The Smoky God, from 1908? In this supposedly true story, the Norwegian Olaf Jansen recalls a sailing trip he undertook with his father to the North Pole in 1829. There he encountered a peaceful and beautiful place with a warm climate, huge animals, and large cities with technologies that did not yet exist at the time. In this world, where they spent a year, they met giants 12 feet tall who spoke a language similar to Sanskrit. Their society was ruled by a king who asked Olaf and his father if they believed in God. Who was this king really?
Interesting, huh? Was it Jesus? And you know, if we were going to talk about these root races, and I'm thinking that Jesus was actually half Asian, which was a quarter Asian, a quarter Aborigine, and then half Nordic. So he would actually look like more of, if you were looking at like if Tiger Woods kids, pretty much Tiger Woods kids. So anyway, I want to go over this Fibonacci spiral right here because I think it's really interesting, because he was talking about fractals. And so if you look up here, I did a video a while back and I was still trying to work all this out in my head, because if you listen to any of the works of Rudolf Steiner, he talks about there being 7 Elohim. Now, we've talked about archangels being form of function. They're like God particles. They're a function, because source is not tangible. It's intangible things, but is the mechanism behind everything. Okay, so if you think about them being a particular form of function of source, like Michael is a protector of man. Okay, so the way that Rudolf Steiner explains it is there are 7 Elohim, and that they keep the balance in a material realm with 5 planetary forces. Now, I wouldn't say that they were good or bad. I would say that the planetary forces are the duality. Okay, so the way that he explains it is that the planets all affect things, they all affect Earth. And they keep a cosmic balance with the Elohim. So he was talking about these 5 planets as Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. And so all of these have a function. They all have a function too. And usually it's the polarity to the Elohim. So the way that he was talking about it, he was saying that when we got into a certain phase in our timeline, because we're looking at everything like a clock, like Mother said, everything runs like a clock, and it runs this way, clockwise. So if we're looking at Rudolf Steiner's work, where he's talking about these different groups, and he's talking about these Elohim group counterbalancing the planetary form of function. He was saying that during a particular cycle would have been when they adopted Yahweh as their God. That was one of the Elohim that had to step down from a higher frequency, right? Had to step down from a higher frequency band into a lower frequency band in order to keep order. Because we were out of this phase right here in the beginning where we had the natural gods. We had our Mother Earth. We had this template here. It was different. The CD was different that we were playing on back then. This was when structure was very loose. So then as we click along, we have these other segments where different archetypes are introduced to move the system along. All right. But ultimately, we're at the end of this system right now, and it's time to take the rug off the loom, guys. So look at this. So if you look at this right here, you'll see a shell. This is the natural unfurling of life. This is a Fibonacci spiral. Okay. The center, the very center, is the 0 point. This is denoted as being gold, being source, being the beginning. This is unity right here. This is pure potential. Okay. So once pure potential steps out of itself and expands outward, this is a Fibonacci, right? So we go to number 2. This is the reflection back on it. This is our moon, our sun. The moon's reflecting back on the sun. Okay, so this is denoted as being silver. This is the polarity right here. This is particle, antiparticle. This is polarity. This is self meets the other. Okay, this is the awareness. Oh, okay. I'm aware now, right? So then, as this starts to unfold more, we get to 3. And we talked about Mercury and copper being conductors. Well, 3 is Mercury. This is conductivity. This is also denoted by quicksilver. Okay? All right, so this is about communication. This is the bridge between worlds. So we've started from the center, we reflected back onto ourselves, and now we're unfurling out. So how this works is you have 1, then you have 2. You add 1 plus 2, you get 3. Okay, so each of these are being embodied. I guess I should put it over here. Each of these are being embodied in order for you to go to the next step. So 1 and 2 embodied itself to become 3, right? So then you had a pair. You had a set of twins. Just like Mother said, everything starts with twins. So she wasn't wrong. So then, 3 is the embodiment of 1 and 2. So if we want to go, if we're going to watch this fractal unfurl, right, we have to go to the next phase. We have to go to the next phase in the fractal curve. So we have 5. Okay, 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 is Venus. Venus is the heart space. Okay, this is harmony. This is also a conductor. We've got two conductors in a row. We've got copper. Okay. We've got attraction and beauty and harmony. Okay, this is resonance and relationship. Okay, so we've talked about we have to bring 5 back into the space, right? In order for us to be able to ascend, we have to bring 5 with 8 with Earth here. Here's Earth right here. What we're talking, Earth is 8 because Earth is an alloy. We're a one-size catch-all system, right? So we're an alloy with a structured reality. This is the embodiment. This is becoming physical right here. So we've talked about, we've been living in physicality, but we have to embody the 13th archetype here, right? 13th is heart integration, which ironically is on our Fibonacci spiral. We go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13. You see how this works? After you embody, you move up. 13 is heart integration, all right? This is Venus in the Earth space. This is what we're embodying right here. We're loving, we're living in love and remembered in our form. We're remembering, right? So we're remembering. So the next step, obviously, is expansion. So we've got 13 plus 8. After we embody the 13th archetype, a Fibonacci spiral numbers goes into 21. So we've got 8 plus 13 is 21, the embodiment of the 13th archetype, plus our structured reality. We are entering into a new expanded reality right here. This is an expanded network here, right? Where we're stepping outside of this. We've embodied our reality. We're looking at the front and the back of the loom at both times. We see the front and the back. We can operate outside of the system now. So this is beyond the self right here. So ultimately, we're going to try to get up here to this 34, right? 34 is the embodiment of 21 and 13. So this is our heart integration and our expansion, embodying out even further for the 13th archetype, which is living intelligence, our biological systems, awareness, and motion. So the system lives through us. So this is total and full embodiment. This is what we're working for, guys. And this is what the New Jerusalem is. It's a state of being where we have worked ourselves through these different phases, and that we've got to the end of our cycle right here, right? And as we get to the end of our cycle, we have to look, right? We've been in a square system, and we had the picture that Newton has where he's standing with his arms out, right? And he's in a square and he's in a spiral in a circle sphere at the same time. And he has his hands on different parts of the sphere. So we're having to embody the 13th archetype. We are having to bring that into Earth. And when we do this, we step into a whole new level of expansion, which is super exciting. So basically, this is just one more thing that ties everything together. Everything together is that it is all about embodiment. It's about embodiment. There's nobody that's going to sell you anything that you can't do on your own, folks. Stop throwing your money away to these spiritual gurus. I'm not saying I'm any expert whatsoever. I've had a lifetime of experiences to go from, though. I was born awake and aware, and I was mentored by spiritualists my entire life. So I've always seen through the veil. And so, you know, this stuff makes a lot of sense to me because I have a lot of memories that I can refer back on to situations that happened. And even though they seemed really far-fetched to believe at the time, like it totally makes sense to me now. Just like I got bit by a wolf hybrid on my hand when I was like 12 years old, 13 years old, when I was holding my dog because my dog was being a pain. I got an initiation mark then. I was initiated. I almost poked my eye out with a pen when I was like 3. That was my sight. That was marking my second sight. That was my initiation mark. I was born with a hole in my spine. I have spinal bifida occulta. That's my serpent coating. But I come from the primordial mother. She told me, I'm the mother of earth, and you come from me. And so that would be the time of the Polarians. This is what I'm learning. I'm a Polarian. This is why Theo and I were one light being. And then we separated into two, and we decided to do this experiment. See, I knew all this stuff, but I've never watched I've never read any of that Blavatsky stuff. I've never taken the time to do it. My grandmother, she didn't, I don't know if she read Blavatsky or not. I haven't seen any of her books. That I have to ask my mom. Maybe she did. My mom would know. So anyway, yeah, I totally think that the New Jerusalem is at the North Pole. This is why I've been going through that North Pole my whole life. That's why I was taken there as a child in SSP training, or whatever, however you want to call it, what they call it today, SSP. I just thought I was having a lot of bad nightmares because I was always getting in bed with my parents. I'd have terrifying, scary dreams. You know, it was because I was realm walking even then, but, you know, I was being taken under Greenland. And I've talked about that. I've been talking about this for a real long time. But, you know, I did a video a long time ago where I wrote down where I'd been. And it was, I think it's called my SSP history, but my earliest interaction was through the North Pole. I'm coded for the North Pole, and it has to do with my bloodline. So anyway, I would love what y'all have to say. And what do you think about how all of this geometry is rolling everything together? We've got the sacred geometry. We've got these meteors that have peppered the planet from Mars, right? So Earth got impregnated by Mars with meteors. So this is almost your first story, because the first story, they tell you that Venus actually was impregnated by Jupiter, but it was actually Mars. That's where TYR is. It's Tuesday is after Mars, which is Tyr, which is Venus's consort. So we've been told that Jupiter was Venus's consort, but I don't think so. That's, you remember the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars? Yeah, this is it. This is a Mars-Venus connection. And we're going to explore that more, but I got to wait for more downloads. So when you come and find me, I'll be here. We're living past, present, and the future, all at the same time. So I think this is really interesting about Jerusalem, and that it's actually coded with geometry. It's a toroidal field. So I'll link the rest of this video down here in the show notes. I'll pin them, and you got to go and watch this whole video because it's fascinating. So with that, I hope to catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching Sacred Enzyme. Bye-bye.